By late 1920, Ireland was fighting an effective guerrilla war. Around Cork, the IRA was particularly strong. In November, 16 members of the security forces were killed in an ambush. There was another a fortnight later.
As a small child in my nursery, I woke up to see the flames reflected through the north window on the wall, and I thought it was an aurora borealis, which we had seen the week before, and I called to my father. It was between, I suppose, 8 and 9 o'clock at night. And he said, no, he said, there's the damn British burning Cork.
I was a fireman in a fire brigade, and I received a call to proceed to Edgelands Cross. And on our way out, we saw the fire in the Grand Parade, part of Patrick Street burning, like, so we couldn't proceed any further.
They threw an incendiary into the city hall as a last gasp, and that went up with a terrific crash. We saw that going up because that was lit by gas.
And when we turned on the water, all the horses were all stabbed with paints and rendered them all useless.
Black and Tans had gone into Cork, first looting and then burning down part of the city centre. They had prevented firemen from dealing with the blaze.
Well, the black smoke was coming up for nearly a week up the hill. And, we were nearly suffocated.
It was immense. It was as bad as anything I've seen in the Blitz in London.
There's hardly a building left.
British liberal opinion was outraged by these reprisals. Asquith reflected, "Things are being done in Ireland which would disgrace the blackest annals of the lowest despotisms in Europe."
They used to carry the holster on the thigh with a revolver, but hanging from the ring of the revolver, they had a half a burnt cork. And the attitude was that if you ambush us, now you know what's going to happen. Half of Cork's been burnt, and be careful, we might burn your place down.
In December 1920, the government sanctioned official reprisals. Over the next few months, hundreds of homes of those suspected of being involved with the IRA were deliberately destroyed by Crown forces. But British government policy was ambivalent. Lloyd George, seen here with the Irish Secretary inspecting Black and Tans in London, was presiding over a cabinet wavering between a hard military line and a soft civil approach. As a result, there was no clear policy, no firm line on the reprisals. The army was furious over the indiscipline of these men, but could do nothing since they were under police control. Now, even a military victory would mean little.
The question that the soldiers themselves were asking then, and will always ask in these sort of circumstances, is then what? What next? What does this military success mean in political terms? It means nothing, because what you've done is to just introduce violence, oppression into the whole political system, and it's almost impossible to imagine that after this display of violence, the moderate majority will then turn around and say, well, now we're happy to cooperate with you in some form of amicable solution.
By April 1921, incidents involving the security forces and the IRA were running at about 60 a day. In May, they attacked the British local government office in Dublin. The army was now telling Lloyd George that a military victory could be achieved only by full martial law and the suspension of civil liberties. With the local government office burnt out and its records destroyed, Britain's already shaky control over the country was further weakened. Up north, the Unionists had accepted the provisions of the Government of Ireland Act, and in May went to the polls to elect their parliament.
Very rapidly, the feeling of not wanting the devolved parliament gave way to a sense of pride in the Belfast parliament. and a sense that with some good fortune it might be able to operate as a separate legislature under, of course, the overall supremacy of the Imperial Parliament at Westminster.
In late June, King George V, who had already an active interest in Irish affairs, opened the Belfast Parliament.
The visit itself, in a way, set a seal on the constitutional propriety of the setting up of Parliament. From the Unionist point of view, this was a very much needed boost to morale and made the best possible beginning for the new Parliament.
His speech was conciliatory and obviously directed towards the south.
I appeal to all Irishmen to stretch out the hand of forbearance, to forgive and forget, and to join in making for the land which they love a new era of peace.
It was time for a truce.
Political events were moving. There was an embryonic state or apparatus of state beginning in the north, and it was time to begin serious initiatives as well so that things would not get out of hand.
The IRA was showing clear signs of wear, and it's quite possible that had the British pressed on through the summer of 1921, they might have destroyed large parts of the IRA organisation. But this would have required a sort of effort which Lloyd George had by now decided was politically impossible.
The political climate did seem to be favourable. That is to say, public opinion, both in Britain and in America, seemed to be favourable towards the Irish claims in view of the stories of reprisals of the Black and Tans and of the conduct of the War of Independence. In propaganda terms, it was a favourable climate of opinion in which to begin negotiations.